So welcome everybody. My name is Maya Fedeli. I'm joining from Milan in Italy. And actually, let me just introduce ECSA. ECSA is the European Citizen Science Association, which is a membership organization that was set up in 2014. And the main goals of this association are to increase the democratization of science and encourage the growth of citizen science in Europe, and the support, the participation of the general public in research processes in all the different topics. And inside ECSA, there are several working groups on different topics. And the working group that I have the honor to co-chair with my colleague, Andrea, and I will leave the floor to her in a bit, is the name of the group is Storytelling and Other Arts, because you can, if you know something about citizen science, really needs some ways to express ourselves, and we do believe that storytelling can be one of these ways, and also obviously the other arts that we have in the name of the group. And if you would like to join the group, just please drop an email to me or to Andrea. We do meet from time to time, like in a couple of months. So it's not so such a pressure to join the group. If you would like to join, just really feel free to contact us. And then I will leave the floor to Andrea for that, and so she will present our speaker today.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you everyone for being here. Yes, my name is Andrea Troncoso, and I am joining from Heidelberg, Germany. And I am a member of the ECSA and chairing with Maya this working group. If I remember well, I think I met Charles Louis maybe in 2020 or at the middle of the pandemic. It was one of these things that happened via LinkedIn. I saw his name, and he was running a workshop, something with 80 days around the globe, storytelling, and he will tell more about his trajectory. But I thought that it was a very good idea to invite him and to get him sharing his very nice skills and expertise in storytelling. He's an agile trainer and a very engaging and compelling storyteller based in Belgium. And without further ado, I really hope that this workshop will spark new ideas on you and will nourish your soul. So let's give the floor to Charles Louis. Thank you, Charles Louis, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrea, Maya, and Paul for the introductions. Now, there is one thing I don't know much about is citizen science, so I will not try and make any assumption on what it is or what it is not. I do know something about storytelling, but then again, you know, in the invitation it said that you will learn how to tell stories, but I have a trick. I'm not writing my own stories. I take things like this and then I use stories that have already been written by other storytellers, like this is one from Hans Christian Andersen, and then I use them as a vessel for doing some work. So one other thing that I also enjoy doing is starting on time. So let's start and dive right into it, because this is actually a way to value people who are on time. And then for the others, well, they'll have to catch up later on. And what I'll do is I'll just start reading a story. So make yourself comfortable. If you've got a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, grab it, and there you go. So the story is from this book by Hans Christian Andersen, Danish storyteller, and the story is called The Emperor's New Clothes. Oh yes, I'm also a board game enthusiast, but like this is something that we can talk about later. Mainly now, storytelling. So The Emperor's New Clothes. Many, many years ago lived an emperor who thought so much of new clothes that he spent all his money in order to obtain them. His only ambition was to be always well dressed. He did not care for his soldiers, and the theatre did not amuse him. The only thing, in fact, he thought anything of was to drive out and show a new suit of clothes. He had a coat for every hour of the day. And as one would say of a king, he is in his cabinet. So one could say of that emperor, He is in his dressing room. The great city where he resided was very gay. Every day many strangers from all parts of the globe arrived. One day, two swindlers came to this city. They made people believe that they were weavers and declared they could manufacture the finest cloth to be imagined. Their colors, their patterns, they said were not only exceptionally beautiful, but the clothes made of their material possessed the wonderful quality of being invisible to any man who was unfit for his office or unpardonably stupid. That must be wonderful cloth, thought the emperor. If I were to be dressed in a suit made of this cloth, I should be able to find out which men in my empire were unfit for their places, and I could distinguish the clever from the stupid. I must have this cloth woven to me without delay. So of course he gave a large sum of money to the swindlers in advance that they should set to work without any loss of time. They set up 2 looms and pretended to be very hard at work. But they did nothing whatever on the looms. They asked for the finest silk and the most precious gold cloth. All they got they did away with and worked at empty looms till late at night. Oh, I should very much like to know how they are getting on with the cloth, thought the emperor. But he felt rather uneasy when he remembered that he who was not fit for his office could not see it. Personally, he was of opinion that he had nothing to fear, yet he thought it advisable to send somebody else first to see how matters stood. Everybody in the town knew what a remarkable quality the stuff possessed, and all were very anxious to see how bad or stupid their neighbors were. I shall send my honest old minister to the weavers, thought the emperor. He can judge best how the stuff looks, for he is intelligent, and nobody understands his office better than he. The good old minister went into the room where the swindlers sat before the empty looms. Heaven preserve us, he thought, and opened his eyes wide. I cannot see anything at all. But he did not say so. Both swindlers requested him to come near and ask him if he did not admire the exquisite pattern and the beautiful colors, pointing to the empty looms. The poor old minister tried his very best, but could not see anything, for there was nothing to be seen. Oh dear, he thought, can I be so stupid? I should never have thought so, and nobody must know. It is possible that I'm not fit for my office. Oh no, no, I cannot say that I was unable to see that cloth. Now, have you got nothing to say? Said one of the swindlers while he pretended to be busily weaving. Oh, it is very pretty, exceedingly beautiful, replied the old minister, looking through his glasses. What a beautiful pattern, what brilliant colors! I shall tell the emperor that I like the cloth very much. Oh, we are pleased to hear that, said the 2 weavers, and of course they described to him the colors and explained the curious pattern. The old minister listened attentively, that he might relate to the emperor what they said, and so he did. Now, the swindlers asked for more money, silk and gold cloth, which they required for weaving. They kept everything for themselves, of course, and not a thread came near the loom, but they continued as hitherto to work at the empty looms. Soon afterwards, the emperor sent another honest courtier to the weavers to see how they were getting on, and if the cloth was nearly finished. Like the old minister, he looked and looked, but could see nothing, as there was nothing to be seen. Is it not a beautiful piece of cloth? Asked the 2 swindlers, showing and explaining the magnificent pattern, which, however, did not exist. I'm not stupid, said the man. It is therefore my good appointment for which I am not fit. It is very strange, but I must not let anyone know it. And he praised the cloth, which he did not see, and expressed his joy at the beautiful colors and the fine pattern. It is very excellent, he said to the emperor. Everybody in the whole town talked about the cloth. At last the emperor wished to see it for himself, while it was still on the loom. With a number of courtiers, including the two who had already been there, he went to the two clever swindlers, who now worked as hard as they could, but without using any thread. I'm just going to pause the story here. This is like not in the story, this is just me pausing the thing. I think this is a good time to just gather our thoughts together and do this with a group, because I'd love to hear, I'd love it if you could just talk in small groups about what is it in that story that may or may not be relating to some experience you've had. So we've all heard the beginning of this story until I paused. Everybody seems to marvel at this precious cloth. No one's ever seen it, but that's another story. So like, how much does that relate? So I've created breakout rooms, and then you'll have a conversation about that. Okay? The instructions are vague enough. You can do something with that. All right. Okay, so I'll give you 7 minutes in group to talk about in what way that this relates. See you in a bit. Welcome back, everyone. How was it? I mean, feel free to unmute yourself and say something, because when I see people nodding, I may be like the minister and imagine something that's not there. So
I was saying that the topical thing, every time, Charles-Louis, this is about now the 4th time I've heard this story with you, and every time it's something different. And right now it's the thing, in elephant in the room is, the US elections, which is the perfect example of this whole thing. Yeah. So that's glaring example.
thanks, Sharon. Anyone else wants to share some things that yeah, Zarja?
Yeah, we sort of, Zaria,
sorry.
It's okay. We sort of had the same type of, I mentioned the same thing with misinformation and disinformation going around as well. And then Kirsten actually had a really interesting, like sort of a bit different example, but it's kind of the same, but on more day-to-day scale. Kirsten, would you share it with others? Because I think it was a really good like analogy or a metaphor, what you experienced in your work.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I just hope my network will be good for everyone to hear me. Hello to everyone from Nigeria, West Africa.
Hello. Wow.
This story you just shared resonates well. Like I was telling my group that I'm actually in one of our outlets in Abuja, Nigeria, the capital, and we sell African clothing. And we have a lot of expatriates and foreigners and Nigerians that have a particular style in mind that doesn't suit them. But because the style is in vogue in Instagram, Facebook, everybody wants to wear it. And believe me, I'm guilty, but I sell it to them and I tell them they look good, but they don't.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's so common. It's so common. Every designer would tell you that. In a week, you have about 2 designs coming out and everybody wants to buy it. But it's not suiting them. But you want to sell and they're insisting they want to buy. And we go ahead and sell it to them and they look funny.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing. This is really like, the way I interpret this is like whatever it is that I think, actually, if they want to buy it, they will believe anything anyway. And
Exactly.
yeah. Oh, wow.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In our group, we also mentioned some like illusions, like words or concepts that were resonating with me, and the collective denial, and how a story brings us to so many different fields of life. Like we talk a little bit of academia, so because it has to do with authority, and now saying something that it's against what the authority is doing. Sometimes it's more difficult for women in academia than for men, and also belonging to a group, and you don't want to be the disruptive one. So if everyone is saying that that's the way, that's good, then there is a sense of something holding you back to say a different thing. So those were some of the things that we were speaking about.
Oh yeah, thank you for sharing this. It is like everyone is saying how beautiful these colors and these patterns are. So I'm not seeing anything. Why would I be the one saying I don't see anything? Yeah. Teresa, did you also have your hand raised a little bit, or I saw some fingers flashing in front of the camera, or?
Yeah, I'm just going in agreement with Andrea. I was in the group with Jonathan and Emma, and yeah, we were talking about also at times, depending on the group that you're in, and also it's also a cultural thing in a way. But going back to the group, at least in my I was talking about my case. It really depends on whom I'm with also, and how how comfortable I feel, and if I want to or not be disruptive in that way. But yeah, I don't know and I don't know if Jonathan wants to say anything regarding that, because he also talked about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I think it's linked to, we mentioned the imposter syndrome, and sometimes, well, for instance, there was an acronym I didn't know in my organization, and everyone was using it, and I didn't want, to be the one like looking stupid, like, there's the ministers in this kind of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it is a very human behavior. So like this is a thing where I find, I mean, I will continue with the story in a bit, but this is also the thing where I find that stories make it also easier to talk about that, to talk about these behaviors, because suddenly we can relate to what's happening in the story without putting us into a kind of difficult position, like, hey, like I've seen this, but like, hey, let's talk about this story. And then how does this story relate to what we see right now? It is, anyway. So, anyone wants to hear the rest of the story? I hope there's at least a yes. Yes, okay, I see smiles. I'm going to assume that these are like a yes. So, the emperor really wanted to see what it was like, and what was it? Yeah, okay. So he comes with his whole court, and they go to the clever swindlers who worked as hard as they could, but without using any trade. And there. Is it not magnificent? Said the two old statesmen who had been there before. Your Majesty must admire the colors and the pattern. And then they pointed to the empty looms, for they imagined that the others could see the cloth. What is this? Thought the emperor. I do not see anything at all. That is terrible. Am I stupid? Am I unfit to be the emperor? That would indeed be the most dreadful thing that could happen to me. Really, he said, turning to the weavers, your cloth has our most gracious approval. And nodding contentedly, he looked at the empty loom, for he did not like to say he saw nothing. All his attendants who were with him looked and looked, and although they could not see anything at all, they said, like the emperor, it is very beautiful. And all advised him to wear the new magnificent clothes at the great procession which was soon to take place. It is magnificent, beautiful, excellent, one heard them say. Everybody seemed to be delighted, and the emperor appointed the two swindlers imperial court weavers. The whole night previous to the day on which the procession was to take place, the swindlers pretended to work and burned more than 16 candles. People should see that they were busy to finish the emperor's new suit. They pretended to take the cloth from the loom and worked about in the air with big scissors, and sewed with needles without thread, and said at last, "The emperor's suit is ready now." The emperor and all his barons then came to the hall. The swindlers held their arms up as if they held something in their hands and said, "These are the trousers, and here is the cloak," and so on. Oh, they are as light as cobweb, and one must feel as if one had nothing at all upon the body. But that is just the beauty of them. Indeed, said all the courtiers, but they could not see anything, for there was nothing to be seen. Does it please your majesty now to graciously undress, said the swindlers, that we may assist your majesty in putting on the new suit before the large looking-glass? The emperor undressed, and the swindlers pretended to put the new suit upon him, one piece after the other. And the emperor looked at himself in the glass from every side. How well do they look! How well they fit, said all. What a beautiful pattern! What fine colors! That is a magnificent set of clothes. The master of the ceremony announced that the bearers of the canopy, which was to be carried in the procession, were ready. I am ready, said the emperor. Does not my suit fit me marvelously? Then he turned once more to the looking-glass, that people should think he admired his garments. The chamberlains who were to carry the train stretched their hands to the ground as if they lifted up a train and pretended to hold something in their hands. They did not like people to know that they could not see anything. The emperor marched in the procession under the beautiful canopy, and all who saw him in the street and out of the windows exclaimed, "Indeed, the emperor's new clothes are incomparable! What a long train he has! How well it fits him!" Nobody wished to let others know that they saw nothing, for then they would have been unfit for their office or too stupid. Never an emperor's clothes were more admired. "But he has nothing on at all," said the little child at last. "Good heavens! Listen to the voice of an innocent child," said the father. And then one whispered to the other what the child had said. "But he has nothing on at all." "But he has nothing on at all," cried at last the whole people. That made a deep impression upon the emperor, for it seemed to him that they were right. But he thought to himself, "Now I must bear up to the end." And the chamberlains walked with still greater dignity, as if they carried a train which did not exist. There you go. Now, I'm recreating some breakouts so that you can continue the conversation. There were some sparks when we started the story, and now that you've heard it all, what do you make of this? Dare I say, what's the point of that story? What's the point of that story in an ECSA workshop? Some pointers to start a conversation. Any questions before I send you off? No? Okay, so there you go. All right, welcome back. So, what happened? Feel free to unmute yourself and talk about some of the insights you got.
I'll go first, I suppose. Again, I've been adding this little caveat to that. I know what the moral of the story is, and I know that this might kind of go contradictory to that, but There is, like, I feel kind of bad. Like, everyone kind of says that the king is an idiot for believing all these things that have been told to him. But that's the structure that's been in place, and you've got to put your faith in someone. And I kind of use this example of the COVID vaccine, let's say. If you're a general person and don't know about vaccines, and you take a vaccine and you don't see any difference, you don't get ill, but you weren't perhaps ill in the first place, you're putting faith in the system that, yeah, this thing is a real thing. We may not see anything, it might be invisible to us, but there is something there, and I know that's not the moral of the story, but that's it's, I don't know, to be kind of contrarian a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, we need a system in place for stuff to happen. That is true, and we need truth in a system. And to me, the extension that I see with the story is that, of course, these swindlers laid a trap. The trap being, there's this magnificent cloth, but the stupid people can't see it. So of course, don't tell me you can't see it because it will make you look stupid. That's the trap. And yeah, I don't want to go too far on this, but like, it's traps like these that can make our trust in systems, disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Mm.
Because
it's bad faith actors, I suppose. People
yes, yeah, because without any structures in place, nothing would happen. Just look at traffic signs, for instance. Red lights. Even at 3 a.m. on a road, I would stop at a red light, even when there's no one. But because that's a structure that I know I can rely on, and everyone does that, there's no risk. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Chris. Anyone else wants to share some of the insights they shared?
So maybe I can.
Yep.
I was discussing with Jonathan, actually I already know, so maybe it was easier. However, we just discussed about also how you react to things like these are also context dependent, because maybe with your family would have been easier, or family or loved ones or friends would have been easier just to say something, but maybe sometimes in the working place you should compromise and you are not able to really say whatever you think because you just go with the flow. You don't want to be the one that is creating issues and problems. There are several reasons for not doing that. And sometimes you really would like to, but then you don't, because you really need to have a quiet place for work. So we were trying to discuss this, no? So
Oh, wow.
that maybe instead with your family and loved ones, you should be more able to really say, but you're naked.
Yeah, but like I think this really depend on one person to the other, because for some people talking about that in family is even harder than with others. And this is the thing. To me, it's the whole question of like, what makes it easy for me to say something that is contrarian to popular belief things? Or what do I have to lose? What do I risk losing if I say the truth? Which is kind of confrontational question to ask yourself. It's not the one that I ask myself every morning when I brush my teeth or something, It's just, yeah.
Yeah, also in a working place, like, emperor and and then people working for the emperor, you also have this hierarchy in place, which is also working and not making them able to say something.
Yeah. But then maybe the question might be, how can we put something in place to make it easier for truth to be told? Because we need evidence, we need truth. Like, okay, evidence that the cloth works, because they were just working on hot air, or like talking about hot air stuff, like no one had seen anything. So, and then you make plans based on hearsay.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, if I may add something also to the vaccination topic before, it's true. I do agree with everyone, but I do need that in that case, the key could have been empathy, and we lacked that a little bit because during a pandemic, everyone was scared, actually. So we had a lot of emotions going around there. And so it's true, vaccines do work. Science is saying that, but sometimes you need to say that in a very nice way
Yeah.
and to spend some time in explaining that. Um, and I'm I'm an immunologist by training, so this is a topic that I really do feel connected with. And I think this is the lesson also. Sometimes you have to listen and speak with people.
Yeah.
But it's true that at the end, we need some rules, so some like the traffic light. In the end, to convince people, we needed that.
And like even when we do research, there are some rules for like research. If the thing I'm researching, is it something that can be easily reproducible? What are the systems in place? You know, what are the assumptions and so on? Like making sure that we are testing the right stuff. You know, if putting it back to the cloth, if I would measure the quality of the cloth on the amount of money spent, or on the amount of gold thread and gold cloth given to the weavers, that's probably not the right, data to look for. Anyone else wants to share something that hasn't been shared yet? Yes, Selena?
Sorry. Yeah, I was speaking to Zara, is it? About I work with members of the public, getting them involved in research, and we always say to them that, like, oh, if you don't understand something in a meeting or something like that, just speak up, just tell us if you don't understand. No question is stupid. But then we expect them to be these disruptors and to sort of to be that person that speaks up. But in some ways it's even harder because they're not an academic, they don't have the power in those meetings or that situation, and then we also expect them to do that hard work and that we're not willing to do, because we're going to sit in the meeting and go, oh yes, we understand all of that, we're not going, but you member of the public, you speak up and tell us, you be the boy that says there's no clothes on the emperor, so I think
Wow.
it can be unfair to expect that people to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. It's actually super powerful indeed to kind of come to that realization, like, okay, when there's the experts in the room, and then like lay people, for lack of better word, being there. Yeah, we expect you to kind of criticize us in front of everyone, like, yeah, right, like that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Or rather, maybe a more interesting question is like, what should we put in place to make that easy?
Or like we should, if the rest of us as researchers should be willing to put ourselves on the line and say if we don't understand, rather than expecting someone else who, it's like, oh, you're making it easy for the rest of us because you can be the person that says you don't understand because you don't have that understanding, and so then we can all pretend that we did understand because you're the one that's can go.
Yeah.
Get it.
And that reminds me of the first time that I worked. So I was in IT software development at some point in time, and I worked. So it was the first project with a development team, I think in Pune or something, and so we were working on the software that is behind the payment terminals. So like very specific bank thing, and it was 10, 15 years ago. And then they told us, yeah, send us all the requirements, we'll code it. which we did, but then the software didn't come through quite well, and so we tried explaining them, and then we had no video call. But like, did you get it? And of course they said yes, yes. We had no video. I couldn't see the head nod that I wasn't aware of before. But actually, what I realized is that in Indian cultures, there's a huge amount of respect for the elderly or for the, the clients, and like any person you're talking to, the value of respect is so huge that you cannot tell them you're saying nonsense and I don't understand it.
Yeah. So you be polite and just be like, oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
Perfectly clear, perfectly clear.
But then it's like, how do we turn that around to make it easy for you to say you didn't understand it? So like the trick that I had found was like, okay, you're going to work on this. Can you explain it back to me? Not so that I can like, say it's wrong, but like so that we can figure out together maybe the missing bits or the stuff like that. Yeah, thank you. We also had this a very insightful share also by Kirsten. So due to the flaky network in Nigeria, she decided to stay with Paul and I. And Kirsten, would you mind, I mean, if the internet works, would mind sharing the story you told us about the links that you made with the end of the story?
Yeah, that's okay. I just said that
Oh,
for me, the hero in the story are the one that was bold enough to say, "You are naked. You're naked." So like you in India, like
oh,
India, like Nigeria, pays a lot of you are wrong. But there's a revolution
Kirsten,
going on amongst young
Kirsten,
people in Africa. They're standing.
you're breaking up a little bit. So,
Yes, please. To pass. Hello,
okay.
I may have to stop. My next is over.
Okay, yeah. So, are you okay if I summarize what you said with my own words? And please, so I'm gonna
Yes,
do
please.
what Selena suggested. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So,
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. So what Kirsten shared is that, for instance, in Nigeria, there's a huge revolt by the youngsters and by the people from the public, I would say people on the street, these are my words, about what's happening, because they see all the problems, they see all the issues, and they're like really like the kid and like the whole population, and they say, there's big problems. And actually what happens is that the people in power, the government and so on, they are like the emperor at the end of the story. Because actually the thing is, I was sharing how the last sentence of the story really is one I've never been able to understand it, because everyone's telling them that the emperor is naked, and still they continue like nothing's wrong. And this is where Kirsten said, this is exactly what's happening in Nigeria. People are shouting at the government and at the institutions that there's something wrong happening, that like we have problems, and the whole government continues doing stuff like nothing's happening. Like, even though the crowd might be shouting, they're just like, let's continue pretending like everything's fine.
That's right.
Because,
That's
okay. Thank you. So, and
Thank
this
you.
was, Sharon said that she's heard the story so many times, and every time there's something new happening, and I had never made that link. So I'm really, really grateful for Kirsten for joining us today from Nigeria.
Thank you, sir.
Sharon, you unmuted yourself. Do you want to add something, or? No, you. Yeah.
Okay, it's so many of these stories they're like cultural tarot cards, and to hear them over and over again, and it's like, okay, what does it mean for you this time? What does it mean for you this time? I find that fascinating. Every time it's something different that jumps out. Yeah.
Cultural tarot card. I love that. Yeah. Thank you. Now, I'd like to bring this reflection a bit further, and to look at the whole, you know, in our stories, there was a trap set up by the swindlers at some point. And of course, obviously, people felt like they had no choice and they had to continue doing whatever. I would like you now to, in small groups, I'm gonna shuffle the breakout rooms once again. I would like you to figure out, because there was this, like, being able to tell a story thing, but figure out, you've heard the same story-ish. You may not have, like, remembered all the details, but, like, at what point, so you will rewrite the ending of the story. So you take the whole story and you will change one little bit that will make it so that the ending is different. It could be that the emperor doesn't even let them in or something. I don't know. You decide. But one person in that story makes a different decision, and then the story ends differently. You get to decide. All right? Is that vague enough? I love asking people, researchers, whether it's vague enough or not. This is always like, ugh. Oh, you need to okay, thank you, Sharon. Bye-bye. So, I guess this is okay. And thank you, Francesca. You're leaving too, as I can see. Okay. And anyway, for the others, please create a story or change the story using any device that you want. You will have 7 minutes, plenty of time. So, now I'd like to hear your stories. So this time I will not say, does anyone have anything to say? I will pick people. So not pick on people, or, I will pick someone who was in a room and say, hey, how have you changed the story? So let's start with Andrea. Hey, how about you and your group?
Okay, I think John and Ali and Rachel were there, and we could do this a little bit collectively because there were a couple of ideas. So one focusing on the child and the other one bringing another character to the story.
Yeah. I will ask you to just share one version so that we can give enough space and time for the others also to share.
Okay.
Yeah, you or anyone from your group can just start talking and pick their preferred version.
John, could you help me with the selected one?
I'm going to promote your one with the wife.
Yes.
Andrea suggested that the wife comes in at some point and says you're being ridiculous and brings him a robe. But we talked about who knows what about the, what the tailors had told everybody, who knows that condition about, and does the wife know that? It means that the emperor has to respect the wife enough to do that, or so that's where we went in different directions.
Oh, lovely addition of the wife. Oh, you're being ridiculous. I love it. This is so. Yeah, thank you. We should write to Hans Christian. Were he not dead, I'm sure that he would love that. Thank you, John. Can you choose somebody who is not in your group? There's a big chance that you will give a group that hasn't gone yet.
I'll throw the popcorn to Zaria.
Okay, Zaria.
And I'm gonna ask Aida to tell our story because she was the one who came up with, and we really liked it.
You are muted, Aida. Or at least I see your lips moving, but I can't hear your voice.
I can't hear her neither.
It looks like your microphone is not connected. So you are not muted according to the computer settings that I see. Do you need to change the audio settings, perhaps?
But actually, in the room, she was speaking fine. I can testify that.
This is a teaser, right? You set us up. No.
So maybe we can just hear another story. She tries to
Yes.
to go out
Okay.
and come back because it's a pity otherwise.
Yeah. All right. So Aida, best of luck to finding something. Maybe if you have a headset or something. In the meantime, let's hear from the room with Chris, Jim, Leah, and Jonathan.
Okay. So we took a very kind of direct citizen science kind of approach to it, which may not be the most dynamic storytelling, but kind of made most sense kind of in our brain a little bit. So we thought that the tailors from the city, or the tailors that usually come and dress the king, could have been consulted to bring kind of a local flair to this new outfit, perhaps, and they could have provided some insight into, we've never heard of such magical thread. Consulting the other experts and having them come and give their opinion on this magic thread that may or may not exist, perhaps.
Oh, I love that. So suddenly it's not ministers and people who are experts in things of the state, but like people who know the thread and clothes business. Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay, Aida, now I see a muted button on your screen. Let's try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So in our group, we were talking about how maybe it could be that the kid doesn't say anything at all, and then the king doesn't reconsider whether it's true or not, and just nobody does anything, and they all go naked. They all start getting naked because it's the trend. And we talk about perhaps on winter that would change if they get very cold.
Thank you. Oh, wow. The story where nothing changes and then it becomes a trend and everybody. I'm sure these swindlers would get very rich by that. But yeah. Oh, lovely. Okay, so Lara, how about you and your room? I mean, I know Kirsten had to leave, so yeah.
So we had several versions, and the first one we started is similar to the one Chris presented just now, getting the experts and the scientists to actually analyze this fancy material. So it's a little bit from a scientist's point of view. We thought that will change the story far too much because it will be from the beginning, not at the end of the story. So something that was more further on the storyline, it was suggested from Christine to bring someone from outside, like a tourist, visiting the town that just passed by and didn't have to follow any rules or didn't know who this person was, and was the one breaking the news and saying, guys, why is this person naked? And then we have another options. Wasn't sure how, something about the people holding the cape, but I forgot now that they will be the ones doing something. But now I forgot that bit. Sorry.
Thank you. So also, it seems like your group had many versions, but like it seemed like having someone from the outside, whether it's the wife, whether it's the expert scientist, whether it's a tourist, is really something like that comes back. And yeah, Joanne, thank you for adding this these comments in the chat. I'm not going to read it, so people who see this on YouTube might be very frustrated of not having this ad, but this is just for us being here together. Okay, there's one room that hasn't spoken now. I know your names. So Chiara, Leonardo, or Selina, anyone wants to add something?
So Selina came out with the idea basically, but I've wrote it down, so I can just read it to you. And what they came up is the fact that when the emperor sends his advisor to see the clothes in the making, one of his advisor is actually a wise person and recognizes that the emperor is being fooled. So he goes around the court and tells everybody that the emperor is a fool indeed. And so they play along to humiliate the emperor that is seen naked, showed naked around the city, and to sort of bully him into thinking about the way he spends the money of the country. And so, yeah, we enhance the moral of the story in a way.
Yeah, but this is really great, and like in a story, when we write a story, we can decide which way to shape it. As we've seen, we've had different people try to convince the emperor of that thing or not do anything and so on. But like this is the beauty of storytelling, is that the way that we shape the story will also shape the listeners, as we've seen how that story shaped us. Like you may have realized this, but every breakout room had different insights. Every breakout room had different ways of ending the story with different morals or whatever you want to write, and this is really a beautiful thing. It's about like putting in all these different perspectives together and then doing something about it. So there you go. Any thoughts or comments on all these endings and on what we've been doing so far? Okay, this is probably too vague a question for a plenary session. Or Selina, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just thinking it's good inspiration to. I like to read and I like to write, but I haven't like until now thought about trying to use it as a way of communicating with people about research. So I think it's good. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so there's some advantages of this, is like the stories have already been written, so it's less effort. We don't need to come up with a new story every time. Furthermore, also what Sharon mentioned, depending on the current context, depending on the people who are in the room, a story will resonate differently, even though you heard the story already. Like Chris saying, yeah, I know this story already. But being then able to discuss the story with others in a certain context will make a difference. If you read it to your kids and you talk about that, they'll probably say, oh, that's a very funny story, and now he's naked, ha ha ha. Maybe. Maybe some other people will be shocked. What? Emperor naked? No. And what about the children? Protect them, hide their eyes or something. I don't know. But like it will always be contextual. And when we share, so if that already happens with stories, what happens when we share data or the results of a research? How will people, like, dare I say, interpret that?
I suppose stories, there's a different story from every viewpoint, I suppose. So depending on who you ask, it's a Yeah, there's relative, another dirty phrase, relative truth, I suppose. What's true to you may not be true to other people and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, indeed. Joanne, you also unmuted yourself, so.
I'm seeing more and more. So I've just been doing a project where we use storytelling, and it really is a powerful, I'm finding it such a powerful visualization technique in this way, because it's something that you might know already and you can relate to, and it really does make you think about things in different ways, and it just helps to spark conversation. And maybe it can also be used when you present results and data, if you present it alongside a story, how
Yeah.
choosing that story to then talk about the data, and not just present data as fact, but to then talk about how you might interpret it and use the data as the start of a conversation.
Yes, and on that, if I may, there is also the using a story or a storytelling moment, so that before you present the data, people have gone through an experience. It may sound fluffy, but it's not. But at least like you've got this shared experience. We've gone through this. Okay, and now the data, we can now relate it to whatever story it is. So the way that I usually go about this is like you've got this story, so I do a shortish storytelling moment. I'll let the people play with the story, start creating the links, and then the data comes as a kind of, hey, you see what you talked about? Well, this data confirms or denies it or whatever. Like, but you can actually relate it to that experience that you had before. Yes, of course, you need to choose your story. So just a tip. If you take The Lord of the Rings, it's too long as a story to start as a, so, like take a shortish story, something that could take a couple of minutes to read, because it's not about the story. The story is just, as you said, it's a starting point to spark conversations. And then from there, you can come with the data. Yeah. Thank you.
If I can share, because our research is also about based on storytelling. We interviewed the fishers in the Philippines and in Italy. We interviewed the fishers about their knowledge, how do they observe about their environment, about the plants, species, and how do they affect each other. So in the end of the interview, it's a very long story. So to communicate these stories is the challenging part, because there are many things that you can get out from their stories, which actually very valuable to explain what is really happening in the region where they live, in the problems, how the environmental problems are actually affecting the plants or the fishes, and together how they affect each other as well. So it's very beautiful to
Yeah.
get the lessons out from their stories.
Yeah, and that is really the thing, because it's easy for people to share stories about their work, about what they see, because it like like if you talk about your work, I mean, I hope that you're kind of engaged enough in your work to be able to talk about it with passion.
Yes,
So,
yes. Because I'm a fisherman daughter myself.
oh yeah, okay. So then you also relate to that, but this is the thing. This is what makes us human. We are human beings. We're not human thinkings. So that means that we go through a living experience. So the storytelling is actually a very ancient learning device, information sharing device. The First Nations use storytelling. Some stories span weeks, months even. Some stories are not finished, will never be.
And it is based on their, I don't know, decades and decades of experience, because their stories is actually based on their I don't know, grandfather or great grandfather, that what they were telling to us is based on their grandparents or
Yeah.
before that.
And it's a way of transmitting vital information on how to survive or how to deal with this and this and this kind of thing.
Yes, how they have been managing, even though there are problems affecting the resources.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, like, and this is the thing. So a lot, I remember I read sometimes and it was a book about like Irish folk tales that at some point in the late 19th century, there were people trying to collect the right version of stories. So they would gather together and like, okay, let's tell this story. It's probably not Red Riding Hood, but like I'll take that as an example. And okay, what's your version of the story? What's your version of the story? What's your version of the Okay, let's figure out what is the only like right allowed way of the story. In a way, I think this may be diminishing the power of the story. I was talking at some point in the breakout about how when you take Hans Christian Andersen's version of the Little Mermaid, and if you've seen the Disneyfication of the story, they're very different stories. I mean, first of all, in Disney stories, it always ends well. It's not the case in The Little Mermaid. It was not the case in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So, you know, like, but there's a key point. If you look at the Disney movie, the mermaid is being tricked by the witch. In the book, she's not being tricked. The witch tells her, oh, you want feet. Okay, but to know that if you want feet, this will be the consequences. You will not be able to speak and you will walk like you are on scabbards all the time. So like it will be really, it will hurt like hell. I mean, these are my words, not the like, but like, it's super interesting to see how even though she knows the consequences, she wants to go further. But like in the Disney movie, it's like what we did, you know, changing one element of the story changes the whole impact of it. In the Hans Christian Andersen, the mermaid has whole agency of her decisions. Makes her a more powerful character than, I mean, this is probably very, very judgmental, but like, you know, it is the Disney movie, it's a bit like, you know, poor little woman that needs to wait for a prince to rescue her or whatever. This is yeah. Well, stories carry that kind of message too, and it's important the ones that we decide to share. So there you go. Oh, time flies. I see it's already past. Okay. Oh, Andrea, yes.
I just wanted to comment that I liked very much the idea of having an external story, a story that somebody else wrote, and that it's somehow old, and maybe most of us know it, but maybe some people don't, and we will get the same kind of knowledge of the story when we share it in verbally or while reading it loud, and then we will start together discovering different journeys in the story, and that I think it's a very nice way to talk about different things. So we are all coming as externals into the campfire somehow, and there we will do together a recognition and thinking, reflection, and talking and finding solutions to something that we relate, and we make analogies, and it really it's a fascinating way how you it sparks connections.
Yeah. And this is also why it's super important to start with a story. I didn't introduce myself. I'm sorry. Well, of course you did talk about me a bit, but like I'm like, if we want to talk about how we can use storytelling, there's no way that I need to share how many of these workshops I have run and so on, because this will be data, but without the shared experience. And so I flip things around. I do first the shared experience, and then we can talk about the data. But then we're all experts in the room now, because we've all gone through that thing. And when I see the dynamic, like people want to comment and then they add stuff and so on. And so like, this is magic. Well, magic. Okay, don't say that to scientists, but like.
I have a question, Charles-Louis. How does this work in presence? Because I've never done a session with you or with others around folk tales and fairy tales, but in presence, face.
So I'm not sure what your question is about. Is it about the structure of the workshop, or is it or like, you know, step 1, step 2, step 3, or like what is the impact in person?
The impact in person.
I'm gonna answer I don't know. The reason why I'm gonna answer I don't know is that when we do this online, the impact is always shared by the group, and I'm always amazed about the things that come out. And amazed and surprised. Like, these are things, again, today I heard stuff that I could not imagine. So like, and in person it happens as well. Now, is the impact more or less impactful? I have no clue. So it's hard for me to measure. You remember the thing that we said that research need to be like quantifiable and stuff like that. It's hard for me to have, you know, to know where to kind of look for better impact, less impact, more impact. Yeah, hard to answer. So I'm gonna go with I don't know. I hope you can live with that. Good, thank you. Okay, I'd like now to push the reflection a bit further with you, and for that, I'm going to send you into very small groups. And I'll ask you to reflect together. Okay, we've had this experience. We've had some reflections based on the story and so on. Now, in our own context, and my assumption is here that all of you are ECSA members, maybe not, and that's fine if you're not, you know. But like in our context, how can we bring this forward? Similar structures and whatever. So like, just talk with your, most of the rooms will be in pairs. One room will be with 3 people. But like, just talk about like, how can we bring this kind of structure and like this engagement, blah, 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 further in your own context. Good? Can you work with that vague instruction? Yeah, all right. Okay, without going into the details, how was it?
Good.
Good?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed, as I was saying to Paul, many of you, I mean, all of you stayed until the last minute, so I take this as a good sign. And then this, and then. Okay, so let's continue the conversation. You will now be with a different person. And then you will start the conversation with, I was with someone, you don't have to say the name. And that person told me that the way that we could bring this forward is this. So basically, you just repeat what the other said, not your own thing. All right?
Mm-hmm.
This is it. Okay. See you. Okay, so we are really nearing the end of this thing. So I was thinking, should I do another round? Yes or no? But ultimately, yeah, they said that we will not do another round. So you will not have to retell. I was with someone who told me they were with someone who told them blah, blah, blah. So yeah, you know, this is, but since we are nearing this, I would really be curious. Oh, okay, Andrea, you already have your hand raised, so go ahead.
But go ahead, because I just don't want to forget to ask you a question, a burning question.
A burning question.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, I wanted to start a closure. So if you have a burning question, I'd rather have it before the closure, if that makes sense.
The burning question is, when we want to use stories for a specific topic, do we have to choose a story that fits the topic, or what would you recommend? Because so far, in my experience, every story serves the purpose for everything. Like, you can shape it, but maybe I haven't had so many experiences, like this is the seventh maybe, but you have so many others. So in that regard, of course, I will keep on reading stories, but for the ones that are not so familiar, do they now maybe says, this is amazing, I have to buy books with stories, folk stories, and then learn them and see, and how do I choose them for the coming topic that I want to talk with my colleagues?
Okay, so I think I'm going to start again with I don't know, and perhaps the part of the answer is also in your in what you said, because you realized that every story was the right one. And Sharon mentioned that she's had this particular story a couple of times, and each time it was a different outcome. So my assumption is that as long as people are gathered for a specific theme, so, okay, I mean, here it was about storytelling, so the theme was very vague. But if you say, hey, let's talk about, how today's leadership works or whatever, and bring this story, people will already think of that theme. And the story is there to help connecting the dots. And I was with someone right now who reminded about the importance that everyone has different perspectives. So, different perspectives, common theme, common story is easier to get into. Of course, okay, maybe some caveats. Maybe a dark horror story, might not always. I mean, again, it will depend, but if you take short-ish story, mostly people will find the link. So that's the thing. All right. So I really want to thank you for your active engagement throughout this session. That was really a pleasure to watch, and also like to kind of hear, dare I say, the stories you shared, like the impact and the thoughts I had from the different breakouts. Yeah, I mean, this story is never over. Right? It's probably going to linger in your mind for the coming weeks. But I'm really curious to hear maybe one closing sentence from each of you. So anyone can start, and then you can just pick on your next on the next speaker. Like, so what is it that you want to say after this session, or at the end of this session?
So maybe I can start. So my final thought is that we should work in our citizen science project to create a safe environment in which everyone feels entitled to say what they think. Regardless, they are citizens, they are researchers, they are patients, they're doctors, they're whatever. They should feel free.
Thank you, Maya. So the rules are now, since you spoke, you get to pick the next person.
Okay,
and they will keep that privilege as well.
I go to Zaria.
Yeah, I second what Maya said, but I would also add that in my work, instead of searching just for like analogies from everyday life, I might also search them in the stories to bring people closer to things, in stories that are like really like what we did today, basically, and even folk stories and older stories. yeah, it was really, really useful for me, actually. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Zaire.
I choose the next one.
Yep.
So Joanne, is it Joanne? Yeah.
I am going to start a journal, something where I make a note of stories and what I like, I think.
Joanne,
You have to
could you
choose
please
somebody.
pick
I
the
have
next
to choose
person?
somebody. Yes, sorry, I don't like, I can't think things quickly. So, next person, Jim Lee.
Thank you, Joanne. I would like to add just keep these stories running. Keep these stories yes, running. Keep these stories with us continuously. Keep sharing, keep sharing.
Thank you. You get to pick the next one as well, huh?
Ida?
Yeah, I would just say that I think this is actually a very important topic. I think it reaches a very internal part of people. So I think it's something that a lot of people can connect with, and it's very important and useful to use it in our favor to engage with communities as much as we can, especially those communities that are not sometimes have the means to access more complicated or scientific information. And I choose Andrea. No, I think you just spoke. Sorry. Ali?
I haven't spoken.
Sorry. Sorry.
No
There are a
worries.
lot of people, sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. I want to go to my library and get the books of different stories. I want to read more stories after this workshop and to remind myself that the stories are there and they have been there living for years and centuries and decades, and they are there for us. So I want to use them more. And I choose Leonardo.
I think I'd say that everybody loves a good story. So in this case, for our jobs, it would be that we need to choose great stories in order to engage people, because they're very effective in engaging people, as I've learned for this beautiful encounter and by talking with the others. But we need to keep with good stories, because otherwise also stories can fail. And I'm going to choose Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks. I think something that really I really like is the way the workflow basically of a storytelling, where you bring some concepts through the story and then discuss it instead of giving the answers all the time. Even if it's not an actual story, but like a presentation, but have the structure of a kind of a story, and not necessarily just read it completely until the end, but have the discussion during the story. That's what really I liked about the whole workshop and the way you structured it. And Ali?
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of take away, it's the whole thing with folk anyway. Folk kind of basically equals people as well. So it's about giving people voice and kind of input and empathy and that side of things. And also folk stories are very organic themselves, so they grow and evolve as well. So there's a lot of kind of stuff to do with evolution and growth in that respect as well. So there's more continuity in what we think with regards to the arts and sciences and what meets the eye in that respect.
Please remember to choose the next one, Ali.
Sorry, I was doing it telepathically. It's
Sorry. Was that for me?
It was, sorry, the
Oh, sorry,
telepath.
I didn't. So for me, probably a professional one and a personal one. I'm going to try and incorporate the storytelling aspects to the projects I work on for the Impetus project. They have to create their own marketing plans, which is very boring when in this context, but I'm going to try and get them to incorporate kind of like the story circle about what they want to share, how they want to share it, and the end point of what their story they are hoping to portray. And a personal one is I'm going to try and a few years ago, I did write a couple of short stories, but I haven't done it for a while. So I might try and do another short story soon, although I'm not sure if I have any good ideas left. We'll see. I will choose Lara. Is Lara gone?
Yes, hello. So I have several things going around in my head now, but one of them is, well, there's something I do every year that is going to a school and read a story, but the kids are growing, so this story needs to move on, and I'm finding difficult to find short story that fits in the certain I have to read to do the activity. But this just reminds me that you didn't read the full book, but you managed to get just from a short part of this story to get enough interaction with the audience. So maybe I shouldn't focus to get a full book and just read more specifically a long book and select like a part of it that I actually can read to the school. So that's one of them, one of many. And I pass to Rachel.
Oh, was that me? Sorry.
Yes.
Well, I found it really exciting because I'd thought at the beginning it was going to be about having to write a story from scratch, and I was a bit intimidated by that idea. But it turned out to be sort of, well, listening to a good story and then talking with others and shaping a story from that, which was a much more enjoyable and interesting process. So yeah, I liked it, and I'm inspired to, like the others, to read even more stories and to think about how to use them to encourage people to talk about these issues, and taking part in science communication projects where people are, where everybody's got their own story and everybody can share their own expertise, because everybody's an expert in the end.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, have you spoken yet?
Yep.
I can't see anybody else on my little screen that hasn't spoken. So
I think Paul hasn't spoken.
Paul hasn't said anything.
You're right. I haven't said anything at all. I've been the ghost in the background of this workshop. No, I mean, I think a lot of it has been very eloquently and beautifully encapsulated here. But I assume that a lot of us work, if not in citizen science, then in science, and we all engage with various communities and stakeholders and stuff like that. And to kind of steal from you, Charles-Louise, you say put the shared experience first and then the data. And we can all adapt what we've learned here by using these previously written stories and use our own experiences to turn those into storytelling devices to then connect with the people that we need to connect to and want to connect to, because we do live in this world after all. We can't do anything on our own. And again, we can take all of our experiences, no matter what they are, to achieve our personal and professional.
Thank you. So that was it. Really a huge thanks to Andrea and Maya for inviting me, and for you all for your contributions. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. So Jimly, I see that you're leaving, so bye-bye. Anyway, like, it's over, so if you really need to run, you can. But so, I mean, yeah, I'm mostly available on LinkedIn, and if you've got any questions, stuff, or want to like chat, feel free to reach out. And there you go. Enjoy the end of the week.
Yes, thank you. It was a lovely workshop. Thank you, Charles-Louise.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.